Spain is a country located in extreme southwestern Europe. It occupies about 85% of the Iberian Peninsula, which it shares with its smaller neighbor Portugal. Spain is a storied country of stone castles, snow-capped mountains, vast monuments, and sophisticated cities, all of which have made it a favored travel destination. The country is geographically and culturally diverse. Its heartland is the Meseta, a broad central plateau half a mile above sea level. Much of the region is traditionally given over to cattle ranching and grain production. In the country's northeast are the broad valley of the Ebro River, the mountainous region of Catalonia, and the hilly coastal plain of Valencia. To the northwest is the Cantabrian Mountains, a rugged range in which heavily forested, rain-swept valleys are interspersed with tall peaks. To the south are the citrus orchard-rich and irrigated lands of the valley of the Guadalquivir River, celebrated in the renowned lyrics of Spanish poets Federico Garcia Lorca and Antonio Machado. The country's southern portion is desert, an extension of the Sahara made familiar to Americans through the spaghetti western films of the 1960s and early 70s. Lined with palm trees, rosemary bushes, and other tropical vegetation, the southeastern Mediterranean coast and the Balearic Islands enjoy a gentle climate, drawing millions of visitors and retirees, especially from Northern Europe. Spain's countryside is quaint, speckled with castles, aqueducts, and ancient ruins, but its cities are resoundingly modern. The Andalusian capital of Sevilla is famed for its musical culture and traditional folkways. The Catalonian capital of Barcelona for its secular architecture and maritime industry. And the national capital Madrid, for its winding streets, its museums and bookstores, and its around-the-clock lifestyle. Spain is bordered to the west by Portugal. To the northeast, it borders France, from which it is separated by the tiny Principality of Andorra, and by the Great Wall of the Pyrenees Mountains. Spain's only other land border is in the far south with Gibraltar, an enclave that belonged to Spain until 1713, when it was ceded to Great Britain in the Treaty of Utrecht at the end of the War of the Spanish Succession. Elsewhere, the country is bounded by water, by the Mediterranean Sea to the east and southeast, by the Atlantic Ocean to the northwest and southwest, and by the Bay of Biscay to the north. Spain accounts for 5/6 of the Iberian Peninsula, the roughly quadrilateral southwestern tip of Europe that separates the Mediterranean Sea from the Atlantic Ocean. Most of Spain comprises a large plateau divided by a mountain range. Several mountains border the plateau, the Cantabrian Mountains to the north, the Iberian Cordillera to the northeast and east, the Sierra Morena to the south, and the lower mountains of the Portuguese frontier and Spanish Galicia to the northwest. The Pyrenees run across the neck of the peninsula and form Spain's border with France. There are two major depressions, that of the Ebro River in the northeast, and that of the Guadalquivir River in the southwest. In the southeast, the Baetic Cordillera runs broadly parallel to the coast to merge with the mountains of the Iberian Cordillera. Along the Mediterranean seaboard, there are coastal plains, some with lagoons. Offshore in the Mediterranean, the Balearic Islands are an unsubmerged portion of the Baetic Cordillera. The Canary Islands in the Atlantic are of volcanic origin and contain the highest peak on Spanish territory, Teide Peak, which rises to 12,198 feet on the island of Tenerife. Spain has some of the oldest as well as some of the youngest rocks in Europe. The entire western half of Iberia, with the exception of the extreme south, is composed of ancient rocks. Geologists refer to this Hercynian block as the Meseta Central. The term meseta is also used by geographers to designate the dominating relief unit of central Iberia, which constitutes a relatively stable platform around where younger sediments accumulated, especially on the Mediterranean side. In due course, these sediments were pushed by major earth movements into mountain ranges. The northern Meseta Central, which has an average elevation of 2,300 feet, corresponds to the tablelands, or plateau of Castile and León, although it is in fact a basin surrounded by mountains and drained by the Douro River. On the other side, the southern Meseta Central is some 330 feet lower. Its relief is more diverse, however, owing to heavy faulting and warping caused by volcanic activity around the Calatrava Plain, and two complex river systems separated by mountains. The southeastern side of this range drops almost vertically by more than 3,300 feet to the Guadalquivir Depression, dividing the northern and southern mesetas, making one of the most outstanding features of the Iberian Massif. Their highest points, Peñalara Peak at 7,972 feet, and Almanzor Peak at 8,497 feet, rise well above the plains of the Central Plateau. Part of Alpine Europe, the Pyrenees form a massive mountain range that stretches from the Mediterranean Sea to the Bay of Biscay, a distance of some 270 miles. The highest peaks, formed from a core of ancient crystalline rocks, are found in the Central Pyrenees, notably Aneto Peak at 11,168 feet, but those of the west, including Ani Peak at 8,213 feet, is not much lower. The mountains fall steeply on the northern side, but descend in terraces to the Ebro River trough in the south. Relief on the nearly horizontal sedimentary strata of the Ebro Depression is mostly plain or plateau, except at the eastern end, where the Ebro River penetrates the mountains to reach the Mediterranean Sea. The Iberian Peninsula has a dense network of streams, 3 of which rank among Europe's longest: the Tagus at 626 miles, the Ebro at 565 miles, and the Douro at 556 miles. The Tagus, like the Douro and the Guadiana, reaches the Atlantic Ocean in Portugal. In fact, all the major rivers of Spain, except the Ebro, drain into the Atlantic Ocean. The hydrographic network on the Mediterranean side of the watershed is poorly developed in comparison with the Atlantic systems, because it falls into the climatically driest parts of Spain. However, nearly all Iberian rivers have low annual volumes, irregular regimes, deep valleys, and even canyons. The predominant fluvial regime in Spain is thus characterized by a long or very long summer period of low water. This is the regime of all the major arteries that drain the Meseta as well as those of the Mediterranean seaboard, such as the Júcar and the Segura. For example, from August to September the Guadiana River usually has less than 1/10 of its average annual flow. Only the Ebro River has a relatively constant and substantial flow, 19,081 cubic feet per second at Tortosa, coming from snowmelt, as well as rainfall in the high Pyrenees. The flow of many Iberian streams has been reduced artificially by water extraction, for purposes such as irrigation. There are 5 major soil types in Spain. 2 are widely distributed but of limited extent. Alluvial soils are found in the major valleys and coastal plains poorly developed. Brown forest soils are restricted to humid Galicia and Cantabria. Acidic southern brown earth is prevalent on the crystalline rocks of the western Meseta, and gray, brown, or chestnut soils have developed on the calcareous and alkaline strata of the eastern Meseta and of eastern Spain in general. Soil erosion resulting from the vegetation degradation suffered by Spain for at least the past 3,000 years. The most affected areas are the Central Plateau and the southern and eastern parts of Spain. One of the major problems of modern Spain is the threat of desertification. Nearly half of Spain is moderately or severely affected, especially in the arid east as Almería and Murcia. The government has adopted policies of afforestation, but some authorities believe that natural vegetation regrowth would yield more speedy and more permanent benefits. There are 3 different climate zones in Spain due to its large size. Visitors can expect a Mediterranean climate, characterized by hot dry summers, and mild rainy winters. Rain generally falls mainly in spring and autumn. The mountains that surround the plateau have higher rainfall, and often experience heavy snowfalls in winter. The weather is often cloudy with frequent rainfall. On the Mediterranean coast, the climate is moderate with rain in spring and autumn. The area around Murcia has an almost African climate, rainfall is low, and the heat haze is common during summer. On the Atlantic coast, the summers are cooler, and fairly heavy rainfall occurs during winter. Inland, the summers are hot and the rainfall decreases. The Balearic Islands have a maritime climate, with cool wet winters, and warm dry summers. Nearly half of Spain is covered by spontaneous vegetation, but only a small proportion is classified as dense woodland. Northern Spain has heath and deciduous woodland. The mountains of the northern Meseta and the Iberian and Baitic Cordilleras carry deciduous Portuguese oak. Those of the central Pyrenees, the Iberian Ranges, and the central Sierras have diverse pine species. The proximity of Africa has given Spain more African species of wildlife than are found in the other Mediterranean peninsulas, while the Pyrenean barrier, and the general extent of the country, explain the number of indigenous species. The European wolf and the brown bear survive in the scarce wild areas of the northeast. The Barbary ape is possibly indigenous, but is more likely an import from North Africa. It survives only under protection at Gibraltar. The wild boar, wild goat, and fallow deer are more common. More than half of the bird species of Europe are found in Coto Donana National Park, at the mouth of the Guadalquivir. The Spanish imperial eagle and other large species such as the eagle owl, the buzzard, and several varieties of pheasant, are native to the High Pyrenees. The country's waters contain a diversity of fish and shellfish, especially in the southeast, where Atlantic and Mediterranean waters mix. Species include red mullet, mackerel, tuna, octopus, swordfish, pilchard, and anchovy. The striped dolphin and the long-finned whale inhabit the waters off southeastern Spain, and the bottlenose dolphin is found off the Ebro Delta. Spain has been invaded and inhabited by many different peoples. The peninsula was originally settled by groups from North Africa and Western Europe, including the Iberians, Celts, and Basques. Throughout antiquity, it was a constant point of attraction for the civilizations of the Eastern Mediterranean. The official language of Spain is Castilian. It is the country's most widely spoken language, and outside Spain, it is generally known as Spanish. The Constitution of Spain allows for its autonomous communities to recognize their dominant regional languages and dialects as having official status along with Castilian. The statutes of 6 of the 17 autonomous communities stipulate the following co-official languages: Catalan in Catalonia and in the Balearic Islands, Valencian in Valencia, Galician in Galicia, and Euskera in the Basque Country, and in some Euskera-speaking territories of Navarra. The Spanish economy began to industrialize in the late 18th century, and industrialization and economic growth continued throughout the 19th century. However, it was limited to a few relatively small areas of the country, especially Catalonia and the Basque Country. The overall pace of economic growth was slower than that of the major Western European countries, so by the early 20th century, Spain appeared poor and underdeveloped compared with countries such as Great Britain, Germany, France, and even Italy. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to give a like, share, and subscribe.